Hello and welcome to the latest CSBP Market Update. My name's Aiden Boyham, and joining us today we have Ben Sudlow, CSBP Sales Strategy and Reliability Manager. Ben, how are you today?
I'm going great, thank you, Aiden.
Ben, it's been a very eventful few weeks since our last market update in February. Obviously the conflict in the Middle East has caused unprecedented issues for industries across the world. The war has had far-reaching human and economic consequences, and for us, one of those economic consequences is obviously the disruption to global fertiliser supply chains. Before we get into today's episode, should clarify that the situation does continue to evolve rapidly. We are filming on Wednesday the 25th of March, so yeah, things can and probably will change very quickly over the coming days and weeks. Ben, can we just start with phosphates? Can you take us back to when the conflict started and what's happened since then, and where growers and where we find ourselves as we approach seeding?
When the conflict happened, there's a lot of phosphates that still come out of the Middle East, including some that we were expecting out of the Middle East, and they were unlikely to come. As soon as that happened, we moved quickly to look for alternative supply, which we've managed to secure from the US. That product is now loading on its way, and with that in mind, that's the kind of thing that will allow meeting farmers' needs for their ammonium phosphates for seeding. Probably the key part of it is its timing now. We're going to manufacture more, we're going to manufacture longer hours, and that ammonium phosphate's coming, but we don't meter that out between now and all the way through to mid-May as that product becomes available through manufacture and import.
So I guess we want to make sure that everybody can have some product in order to be able to get started for seeding.
Exactly, and then as it comes available, whether we make it and ships arrive, it just flows out into the market to meet that need.
All right, well that's phosphates, Ben. Let's talk about nitrogen now because it is front of mind for growers. What's happening there?
Nitrogen really is a big ticket item. Middle East really is the hub of nitrogen supply. There's been a lot of talk about oil. Persian Gulf supplies 20% of the world's oil. It supplies 30% of the world's traded urea. So it's much more significant in terms of global impact than what we're seeing for oil at the moment. And everyone's seeing some of the challenges that people are getting around diesel and availability of fuel and so forth. So urea and nitrogen is a big ticket item. So that's really the problem at the moment. Ships can't get in to unload. They're closing urea plants. There's ships that are loaded in the Persian Gulf that can't get out. And because of the energy that's not going to some of the other Southeast Asian places, they're not being able to produce urea as well. So the net impact is structural decline in urea production and flow over the last 3 weeks.
So how have we responded to these issues over the past few weeks?
Look, as soon as that happened, we clearly know the importance of Persian Gulf to the urea market, and as soon as we felt that there's a problem there, that we moved pretty quickly to see what other options there were around UAN supply, Flexi-N, and also ammonium sulphate. Both of those, the near-term response of those is that UAN has been readily available out of China at very competitive prices and relatively good prices relative to where urea has been even in recent times. So we moved to secure as much of UAN as we could at that time, and we also looked at what options were to buy more granular ammonium sulphate out of China. So our move to go to China promptly was to try and secure more nitrogen supply immediately for what we thought was going to be a problem in the Middle East.
So what has happened with that alternative supply you've talked about there?
So maybe taking Flexi-N, UAN first. We moved to get contracts from China, which we did, and then just over a week ago, the Chinese government, in protecting their own nitrogen market domestically, have gone and removed export licence for UAN cargoes immediately. There's some cargoes that came out in the 2 weeks following that, including some of ours, but cargoes that go through all through the April, May and June that might be somewhat scheduled, now those are not getting export licence. We've got high uncertainty that we're going to get export licence, and today we're taking the view they're not going to be available, therefore we're moving to see what alternative supplies of product we can get.
Okay, well in terms of alternative supplies, can you explain, what we're doing to mitigate this this issue with supply emerging out of China?
So firstly, you go and see where you can get UAN elsewhere. We're going to see what available there are for other markets, US and Europe, typically Egypt. So those ones are being looked at, and that's an option we're working through right now. The other things we're also looking at doing is seeking guidance from the government. We've had discussions with the federal government around what they might be able to do to have influence in China to have them consider UAN, somehow they can carve out and allow that to be exported. There was discussion around the federal government allowing Russian oil in, and we're contemplating, is there a way where we may be able to get Russian UAN, subject to the government's advice that would be okay in terms of tariff/sanctions.
So for growers thinking about seeding in the next month or two, is there product available for them to collect?
You've got to consider that a lot of the Flexi-N is out in farmers' tanks now. So in terms of seeding, that's now, most of it's out there, and we're supplying March and April volumes at full contracts. So we're pretty confident that nitrogen for seeding, UAN for seeding, is covered through that full tanks plus what we're going to deliver through into April.
So when we're talking about these mitigation options and avenues, Ben, is increasing local Flexi-N manufacture something that we're looking at?
Of course, we've looked at that and we'll be doing that as much as we can, Aiden. There's probably two restrictions that we can see at the moment. Number one is our production capacity to meet what is a pretty significant shortfall from Chinese export bans. And the other one, there's been a ammonia plant that supplies our ammonium nitrate business that has also gone down in the state. That is reducing the amount of ammonia that's available to produce ammonium nitrate. So we've all got to perhaps have a raw material limitation that's happened due to the breakdown of an ammonia plant in the state.
Let's move on to urea now, Ben. We've heard a lot about the closure of the Strait of Hormuz has had on global nitrogen supply. Can you just give us a bit more information on that? Okay,
so urea definitely is a big ticket item. That's the one where, as I said earlier, the 30% of seaborne trade that comes out of the Middle East. And what you've seen now is both production's been ramped up, product can't flow out, and there's a structural shortfall right now of urea. Most other countries looking for urea right now are going to every other place outside of the Persian Gulf. And with everyone going to limited supply, clearly that's having a big effect on price. And we've seen prices now move up considerably. I think we're seeing retail prices now between $1,350 and $1,400 a tonne, based on what we might be able to secure a urea vessel today. So we've spent the last 2 weeks trying to get urea vessels, and it's been incredibly challenging as some of those vessels that we might have otherwise expected are contracted to come out of the Persian Gulf, and we're expecting they're no longer to be available, or having a high risk that they may not be available in coming months. We're looking at what we can get from elsewhere. That's difficult as everyone else is chasing the same tonnes. And we do have some contract cargoes outside the Persian Gulf we expect to come into WA through April into early May. It's the challenge beyond that, into May and June arrivals. They're the ones we're working on now and seeing what availability we can get, recognising there's still a lot to play out in the Middle East. The other thing that's probably worth putting context to is that in the environments like this, a lot of countries now are doing things like limiting the export of their products. China have done it. They were expected to put urea back on the market. They've said, no, we're not exporting anymore, like they've done with UAN. There's been reports that Russia has put an export ban on ammonium nitrate. They're protecting the ammonium nitrate for their local market. And other countries are now saying, right, we're just going to hold urea internally, which is then further reducing the amount that's available for the export market.
Okay, so for the avoidance of doubt, Ben, we are going to be able to meet contracted tonnes of urea, and work around the clock is happening to be able to source additional tonnes for the weeks and months ahead.
Pretty simply, that's our job. We're feeling comfortable about the contracts we've got, the stock we've got here, and sailing here, that we're meeting our contracts that we've got on the book right now. Our job right now is to buy more cargoes. We'll continue to work to get more urea cargoes to offer out to customers over the coming weeks, so they can get some confidence around urea supply in the post-seeding application window.
Okay, before we wrap up on nitrogen, Ben, is there anything else that we need to know?
The only one which we haven't spoken about, I briefly mentioned it earlier, was granular ammonium sulphate. And one of the things, when we could see the issue a couple of weeks ago, we did go and secure more ammonium sulphate from China. And we will be making that available to sell fairly shortly. With that said, we're taking the cautious approach until those ships load and sail. We're pretty apprehensive to put those out on the market to sell on the event that China changes their mind, which is seemingly quite possible.
Okay, Ben, so fairly comprehensive summary there of what's happening in phosphates and nitrogen. Is there anything else that growers need to know?
Well, clearly, Aiden, there's a whole lot of uncertainty at the moment, particularly around nitrogen supply. It's our job to be working around the clock to try and make sure we can get what we can get to give customers certainty around their program. And I think it's an undertaking we will do to keep our customers informed about where we're at. so they can go and make good decisions around their seeding program and their decisions around how they're going to tackle post-nitrogen applications this season.
All right, well, thank you, Ben. And as we mentioned at the start of the program, the situation does continue to evolve rapidly, and our teams will be striving every day to keep you, our customers, informed as best we can as the situation changes. Thank you again, Ben, for joining us today on the podcast.
Cheers, Aiden.
And we'll be in touch again soon with another CSBP Market update. Bye for now.
This podcast is provided as general information only. The content of this podcast is not a recommendation and has been prepared without taking your objectives or circumstances into account. Before acting on the content of this, you should consider its appropriateness to your circumstances and seek independent advice.